Okay, so this presentation is going to focus on the desktop simulator. This is for training purposes that you guys can get used to running the simulation as a desktop sim on your training laptops. So we're going to go through basically being able to start the simulation and connect with SimCreator DX. And we will use that to be able to kind of run some basic scenarios that we've provided for you on the SimCreator DX software. So what I'll do first is explain what a desktop simulation is, or what a desktop simulator is. It's a basic workstation used to test scenarios and worlds developed in SimVista, an easier and quicker way than running a full simulator. So in your case, when you're designing something in SimVista through ISA, you can run SmackSim Civilian, and what that will do is allow you to run the simulation quicker, so that you don't have to convert everything and move it all into Fusion that way. So we'll talk about the SGL desktop simulator and the Fusion desktop simulator. So where SimCreator is installed, SimCreator is installed in the program files directory, program files x86, not the x64 at this time, but that is currently where it's located. It also requires SDK 7.1 to run. These things you won't have to change. They have been pre-configured for your systems, but just an explanation of kind of where this is and how to know where the SimCreator model that you're looking at and running is located. So SimCreator, what you can do is, if you are running this, you want to go onto your desktop, and there will be a SimCon icon here, a Fusion icon, and then a SimCreator icon. So as we've all opened SimCreator before, we're going to open SimCreator. We're going to go to File, Open, and we're going to open SmackSim Civilian.cmp. So the location of this is a program files, x86, SimCreator, components, users, simulators. Does everyone see that? Okay, so we're going to open SmackSim Civilian. So this is our SGL model. The difference you can see kind of quickly between an SGL model and a Fusion model is the visuals are different. The Fusion model visuals has this F for Fusion, whereas the SGL model has kind of this skybox. So that's kind of an easy way to identify the difference. So we're currently running this SGL model as a non-distributed model. That means that there are no other groups that are running on different networks. This is all going to run directly from my laptop. So I'm going to compile this model by doing the same thing we did previously. Selecting compile. This will take longer to compile because there's more components than what we were doing previously. Now that it's compiled, I can hit the R to execute and run. I'm going to keep all this stuff the same just because this is an example, but it should be created already for you. So when you click OK to run, it will launch your model.
We do not need to connect either in SimCreator.
No, not for an SGL model. Mine might be loaded in a different database than you guys, just because what my tile world might be is different. But this is essentially the simulation. I'm going to alt tab right now so that people can see it in the recording. And I'll show you the basic controls that you can use for this. So give me 1 second.
can also run it in the laptop we have in our lab, right?
Sorry?
So we can also control the driving using the laptop we have in the
No.
lab. No?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use the desktop to do the same thing with the mouse and keyboard.
Okay, but we cannot use the laptop, right?
No.
We need to run it and then go to the whole
Well,
screen.
Like I was saying with Maxim Civilian, you'd most likely only be using that for developing your scenarios, your worlds through SimVista. So you would publish your world, and then you would be able to like save it as tile world, or load an in file, and run Maxim Civilian using the mouse and keyboard just to make sure that everything's looking correct and so on. So basic controls. So let me. So these are the basic controls for. Turn my audio off too. So these are the basic controls. You can move your mouse forward to accelerate. You can move it downwards to decelerate, and you can turn it right and left to steer. And then there's also some controls for the gearing, as well as a few more controls that I'll show in just a second. So you basically put the car at park, and then you can change the gear to reverse, and you can go in reverse, or you can change the gears anywhere between 0 and 6 to put it into gear. So this isn't a manual transmission, but it will lock the gearing to whatever value that you set it to. It is an automatic transmission. So here are some additional vehicle controls. One fun one that you can do is you can use C to toggle the viewpoint. So if you are currently driving but you wanted to see it from like a third-person view, you can click C, and that would change it to a third-person view. This will allow you to still drive around in the simulator, but you can kind of see it like you're playing a video game. So I mean, this is mostly just a tool for you to be able to load your databases in, make sure that the trees and the lights and the buildings are where you want them to be, so you can see them in SimVista, and we will show that. But that's essentially what we use Maxim Civilian for now. Previously, we were able to use it for scenario development too, but we've moved away from that, and now we're using Fusion for that. So strictly, Maxim Civilian is just a tool to double-check your work that you've done in SimVista. So I'm going to hit Escape, and that'll close. Yes?
Can we show this word while we are running the experiment? So you show the top-down view for
No.
the experiment. We cannot.
No. Yeah, that's just something you can do in Maxim Civilian, yeah. But I mean, you have a top-down view of everything. You just don't have it in like 3D, I guess. For
during the development.
during the experiment too, on SimCreator DX.
I have the top-down, like
Yeah.
the line showing in the future, but not in the 3D.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
But does that one will, so the one in the future, can that one indicate where the vehicle is in real time?
Yes.
While I run?
Yeah. Yeah. It indicates the heading and the position. Yeah, and updates that in real time. Yeah. It just doesn't, it's not in 3D, it's just a 2D top-down view. So we'll talk about that as well. So we've gone through plotting. We talked about we haven't talked about log files, but if you get a sim fatal when you're trying to run your simulation, there will be log files. So sim fatal is like an error or something like that of the simulation. We require you on those little nifty mouse pads that you all have. There's some troubleshooting basics on what to look in, but we do ask to provide the log files for an issue that you might be having with your simulation that helps us kind of debug what might be causing it. They also include JavaScript print statements if there are issues We definitely recommend, if you're troubleshooting something and you're developing in JavaScript, to add your own print statements if you're having any issues with that too. So just basic troubleshooting, but we have our own sim fatals that we've designed inside of the simulation to help us better diagnose what might be causing the issue. Definitely use the log files for your own troubleshooting, but you can also, if you have any issues, please provide them to us. Keep in mind that a distributed system will have multiple log files. So each one of the groups in the distributed model will have its own log file associated with it. So if you're having an issue with maybe the ground sim, which has all the dynamics and the I/O, then you'll have a log file that'll say, U of M desktop _ ground sim or something along those lines. So that's definitely important to take a look at the run log and see if you're maybe experiencing some issue with running and compiling. So I'm going to minimize this again and then go back and show our Fusion desktop sim and how we can use that. So I'm going to close Maxim Civilian, and I'm going to open, so File, Open, and open Fusion Desktop Sim. So Fusion Desktop Sim. I'm going to click Open, and that's what I have open right now. So I have Fusion Desktop Sim open, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize SimCreator for now. I'm going to go to my desktop, and on your desktop you should see an icon that's located called SimCon. So this is our simulator console. We use this to be able to start Fusion on another computer or a different IG. So this will be on your laptop computer. So when you're, as an experimenter, when you're running the simulation, you don't have to go over and hover over the participant and launch Fusion and get everything sorted and then go back to your laptop. You can do everything from the laptop here, so that the participant can get comfortable sitting down, getting used to the simulator. So SimCon is a tool that we use to be able to launch Fusion. So right now it's just tailored so that it'll work on a desktop so that you guys can see it. So when I click Start here, this will launch Fusion, and you'll have this spinning RTI logo appear on your screen. So you'll see this when you click Start from the laptop, and it'll show up on the desktop channel for your RDS 100. So this spinning logo means that Fusion is running. You'll also get an indication here on the simulator console that Fusion is running as well. So I'm just going to minimize the simulator console for now and go back to my Fusion model and compile and run the Fusion desktop sim. So I'm going to compile it first, make sure that it's compiled. After it's compiled, I'm going to select Run. And then if I switch back to the Fusion window here, so I selected F to minimize it or to maximize it. If I switch back to it here, you'll see it change. And what it'll do is it'll read in the Fusion XML file, read in the proper resolution it needs to be at, and the certain camera angles that it's supposed to look at for your desktop simulator.
So only one is SimCreator, do you need to keep real-time or individual?
You want to have real-time selected for Fusion. Yeah. So my screen might be a little bit different because I have a rear view mirror, but essentially this is us driving in Fusion now instead of driving in SGL. You might notice some slight differences with how it looks. It's a little bit better quality, but the driving is more or less going to be the same. So move your mouse forward, move your mouse backwards to accelerate or decelerate, and right and left to steer. So now that we have Fusion open on here, I'm going to hit F again just for my case and go onto the desktop. And typically another thing that I do is, like, if I don't want the vehicle driving around, since we're all doing this on like one computer, I usually put the vehicle in park and then I'll hit 0, which is neutral, so that I can move to a different window and not have the car kind of drive on its own. It's just kind of an easy way to switch to a different mode. So now that I have my simulator running, I can minimize SimCreator. The neat thing about Fusion versus how we did it in SGL is anytime you want to change your database or change your world, you would have to shut down the simulator and restart it. In Fusion, with the SimCreator DX, that's no longer the issue. So now I can just minimize this and open SimCreator DX and connect to my simulator that way. So I'm going to open SimCreator DX on the desktop. So now I have SimCreator DX on the desktop as well as my Fusion window.
Developer or?
Yes. For now, we'll just select developer. I'm gonna go into more detail about the differences between the two tomorrow. So just for today, just select developer, and then you can select file and open the generic world day experiment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run, so once you have generic world day open, it will automatically connect with the simulator, and you'll start seeing sim time increasing in time to know that you're connected, as well as in this console window here, it'll say that it succeeded the connecting to the remote host. So we'll explain kind of how SimCreator DX connects with the center channel or the desktop channel and how that all works as well, how scenario plays a part in it. But for today, we just open generic world day, connect it with the sim, and then here is our scenario toolbar. And in our scenario toolbar, we have a drop down of some basic scenarios that we can run. So I'm just going to select the load model scenario, and I'm going to click play. And then it'll ask me activating the scenario or place the current scenario in the core, if any. I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to run my new scenario. And then if I switch back to Fusion, I can now see the scenario that I'm now running. So our load models a scenario that I'm running right now is typically what we run before the start of any experiment. So what this does is it'll load all of the assets that we have in Fusion into the Fusion window so that it'll help decrease lag, and it's basically pre-rendering all of these objects and images for each one of these things. So treat this kind of as like your loading screen, right, when you're playing a video game or something like that. It takes the time to load in all the different assets that's going to take into your world. So instead of having to load into each instance like in Skyrim, you're doing it this way all at once.
So here we start the SimCom first, and then we use the SimCreator.
So yeah.
And then we run the model in the SimCreator. And then if we have the experimental user interface, that one, so we will all still need to start the SimCom first, and then we can directly run.
No, so the experimenter interface is only for SGL.
Or for SGL. So for the new version, we can only use the SimCom plus the SimCreator to run.
Yeah.
Or then for the subject ID, we can directly add it where should we
So the subject ID is in. So if I ran this as experimenter instead of running it as developer for SimCreator DX, it's going to open up this thing called the simulation control panel. So I haven't talked about this yet, but as you can see here, it's telling me the experiment, it's telling me what state it's in, it's telling me what scenario I'm running, and it's also giving me simulation time. If I click stop here, I say stop, this will stop my experiment. And then I can go into here and I can load the experiment that I want, I can load the scenario I want, and I can type in the participant name, right? So instead of using the experimenter interface, we have that built into SimCreator DX. Yeah, and then I can click play and I can basically start the scenario from this control panel. So the experimenter mode is basically like a read-only mode. So you do all of your development in developer mode, create your scenarios, test everything, make sure it's all working. Then when you go to actually run your studies, you switch to experiment mode, and then you're just running through the simulation control panel, stopping, pausing, running through, using direct activation, stuff like that. You can also change the weather dynamically through this as well, so it'll kind of give you more control as a user.
And for the data output, it can record what kind of manipulation you did in the experiment. Like you added the snow at this time portion. Because for the snow, you may not.
Well, if you're trying to gather that data, then you have to send that data back into SimCreator. But like, it's just changing the visuals, but it's not like. I mean, I guess it's not recording that specific data point. Yeah, you would have to. But you can say like, if this increases by that value, you can have that value being sent through just like that through the data merge. So for instance, here in my model, I have this data merge component here. This data merge component is taking in velocity, acceleration, headway distance, all the different position values, and putting it into here. So this is what we're typically plotting, so that would be in your plot file, so that you have that data. So if I go into here, or if I go into the JavaScript for my model, I can see what additional data is being read in. So if I look here, I can see that the heading, headway distance, headway time, lane, very similar to how we do this. You would just do the same thing with loading in like the actual information coming from that weather maneuver. So.
But we always need to open the SimCom first if we want to run the function.
If you want to run it from the laptop, because then it'll send the command to the desktop channel and do it there, instead of you having to like manually launch Fusion from the simulator.
So if we run directly from the simulator, if we see it from the steering wheel, we can directly.
You can launch Fusion, from that, if you want to, but your model still will be on the laptop and everything. So similar to how we're running it right now, right? That model that we did, the U of M desktop model, is on the laptop, not on the. So like treat the laptop as like your controller, your operator station, and then the actual simulation and simulator is being run on that desktop channel. So one's just the controller, the other one is like the the main system. Right?
We will have hands-on experience in the last day afternoon.
So if you look on day 2, the second one says like how to run an experiment and gather data from a customer simulator, from the customer simulator. So like after we go through the SimCreator DX basics, then we're gonna go to the lab and actually show you how to do that there. And the same thing with on day 3, the second half of day 3, it's scenario development and SimCreator DX examples on the customer simulator, and then the scenario development and SimCreator examples. So like the main focus is going to be on the customer's simulator for that second half as well.
Sorry, I have to go. I will be here in 1 hour.
No worries. So pretty much just this is how the desktop simulator runs. You guys can after this is about it runs for about 4 minutes, and after it's done, you'll see in in SimCreator DX that it'll turn white in your maneuvers here. So we have this status toolbar, and again, I'm not going to go into much detail about all this right now because we're going to talk about it tomorrow. But this, once the maneuver is done, it will turn white, and then after it turns white, then you can kind of load up a new scenario or something like that. So if you guys have any questions, you can mess around with it, load up any of the basic scenarios that are there. Try not to kind of create your own scenarios because it's going to get very confusing. And we'll go through it tomorrow and the next day as well. I'm just going to run like our highway example. Go into Fusion. There's also some additional metrics that you can get while you're running this. So currently I have OBS running as well as running the sim. So you can see right now that my frames are pretty low. So you should be running around 60 FPS. That's what we have currently the simulation locked at for your systems. But if you want to see some more data, you can hit S on your keyboard, and that will actually give you some more information on what data is coming through your simulator. So this is mostly Fusion data that we use as more information for us to kind of get an idea of what's being generated and developed when you're running your simulator, but just kind of more information that you can see and kind of gives you a better understanding of what is being generated and how much load you're putting on your system. So it's not equipped on these laptops here, but we also have a tool that was added to your system. It's an add-on called SimDriver. So we'll talk about SimDriver and the capabilities of that as well when we work in the lab, and I'll be able to show you guys how that works and everything. And we have basically two different add-on packages at RTI. One is called SimDriver, the other one's called SimADAS. Both of these help you kind of create different levels of automation for your simulation because we know that's a pretty important topic right now in both the driving industry, the automotive industry, and the automotive research fields. So anytime I can just stop the vehicle, put it into park, and I can switch over to SimCreator DX, and I can start a new scenario or anything like that. I can also go and open generic world night, and that will actually change the database altogether. So if I select generic world night instead of generic world day, I can go back into Fusion and it'll actually reload to a different database. So it'll recompile and load my new database. So it'll switch back to black, load up the new database, and now I'm in generic world night instead of generic world day. You'll see some changes to the buildings and the trees. And then also if you go into SimCreator DX, you can open the simulation control panel and change the time of day here to make it nighttime or something along those lines. And that will dynamically change the time of day, or I guess not dynamically because it's not going to change over time, but you can set it to that specific time of day for a nighttime study or something along those lines. And then another thing that's not currently configured in this model is headlights. Your simulator, the RDS 100, will have a button to turn on headlights, so you have that option as well for the participant. But in this simulation right now, there's not. So I'm going to throw it into the city so you can see kind of what the city looks like at night. So I'm going to go to ambient dense and run this. And this is the city during the nighttime with some ambient pedestrians and ambient traffic.
How do you change the weather? Or how do you change?
I changed the time of day and weather. So if you go into SimCreator DX, and there's this icon next to the toolbox that has it looks like kind of like a trackpad. So if you select that, it will open the simulation control panel.
Okay.
And then here, this gives me kind of like live data of what's going on. And then I can change the time of day in the environment settings there. Yeah. And then I can also change the weather. If you guys have any questions or just want to mess around, feel free. Pretty much for the next, I would say for the next 45 minutes, just kind of mess around with it, ask any questions you might have. Things that you find, I'll answer, and then if it's something that's a little bit more detailed, we will be discussing all the different types of these things later on Thursday and Monday. But if there's anything specific that you'd like to know, just let me know. Another cool thing you can do is when the simulator is running. So currently I just have a big blob. I don't really know what I'm seeing. We have a few different viewing angles that you can do. Two of the ones that I use the most is being able to toggle on whether or not you want to keep the viewpoint centered on the own ship. Your own ship is basically the main vehicle that's being run in the simulator. And then also you have the option here to zoom to the own ship. So I can zoom directly into the own ship, and I can rotate my view so that I'm pointed the direction that I want. And just looking at it right now, I see some triangles that are kind of some arrows that are moving, and these are the ambient pedestrians. And then further down, I see some ambient traffic that's also moving. So this allows me to kind of follow along with the ownership while I'm driving. So if I were to do this at the same time with the simulator, I can see kind of everything moving at the same time. It's kind of hard to do all on one system, but when you're messing around with it on different systems, like the laptop and the desktop channel, then you can kind of see the effects of being able to use stuff like that. So I'll keep this in drive and then switch back over to here. And this should be updating. Might be asking, sorry guy. Another thing you might notice is that collision detection is not turned on. You can collide with other objects and people and buildings. We do collect data throughout the whole process so that you can get the best and most accurate like time to collision data and stuff like that as well. So you can put a lead vehicle in front of you and you can calculate the time to collision up until colliding or hitting the target. So I'm just gonna stop the recording for now, and then I'll start up another one for this JavaScript basics. But if you guys have any more questions, just let me know.